What's up, YouTube? It's Carolina Calvin, and welcome to your NFL 2016 Wild Card Round. And before I break down any of the games that come on this weekend, I wanted to give my record for Week 17 and for the entirety of the NFL 2015 regular season. Week 17, I went 10-6, and for the entirety of the season, I went 161-95. Definitely had some bad weeks, had some really good weeks. On to some of the games, because I want to talk about them. I'm not going to talk too long, but I do want to get in depth with, there's only 4 games that's going to come on this weekend, 2 on Saturday, 2 on Sunday. The first game of the wild card weekend is Saturday, January 9th, 4:35 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The very hot Kansas City Chiefs team head to Houston to play the Texans. Houston, they won a really bad division, but you got to give them credit. I mean, they still were able, they still won the games that they had to win, and they got into the playoffs. But you're in the division with a injury riddled and poorly playing Colts team. You're there with the Jaguars and the Titans. 2 teams that have historically, in recent memory, have not been good. With the Jacksonville Jaguars, definitely have not been good. But you got to give them credit. The defense has stepped up. DeAndre Hopkins has been one of the best receivers in football. A lot of people don't know that, but he's been really good this year. They've had issues at quarterback. They had Ryan Mallett earlier this year. Then they decided Brian Hoyer was the guy because he ended up making more plays for them. So I think they ended the season on a high note. They were able to win their games, and they did what they had to get into the playoffs at 9-7. On the flip side, the away team, the Kansas City Chiefs, they were, I believe they were 1-5 when they lost Jamal Charles, and a lot of people thought their season was done. And I mention this every single week, but you have to look at it. Jamal Charles is their best offensive player. I don't think many people's going to argue against that. He's their best player offensively. But ever since he's went down, the defense has stepped up. Defense line, they've been able to get more pressure. The secondary has stepped up. And the offense, guys like Jeremy Maclin, even Alex Smith, they're starting to throw the ball down the field a lot more often. Because the issue with that team was Andy Reid, West Coast offense. He wanted to dunk the ball, keep dinking and dunking. That wasn't working because teams ended up coming up to play tight coverage, and they attempt to take away those smaller, those shorter routes. But they've been able to throw the ball down the field. Like I said, 10 straight games, hottest team in football. They've had some down games, but the offense didn't move the ball the way they wanted to. But they were still able to get those wins, and without having your best offensive player, I think it's been amazing for them. I'm gonna go with the Chiefs in this one. Like I said, I like some of the things Houston's doing, but I just don't think overall they have enough talent, especially offensively. Like I said, you got Hopkins. Brian Hoyer isn't bad, but you don't have much else in terms of weapons that you really got a game plan for. The running game's still been a struggle, so I think the defense can keep it close. The Houston defense, J.J. Watt, still been really good. I think the defense can definitely keep it close, but I'm gonna pick the Chiefs in this one. Let me see. I did want to mention injury reports before I head to the next game. Whenever I can get around to it. Okay. For the Kansas City Chiefs, these notable injuries that's been reported. Hussein Abdullah, probable. Chris Conley, probable. Jeremy Maclin, probable. Justin Houston, probable. I just named 2 impact players. And D Ford, questionable. I think all these guys are going to play. And it's the playoffs, man. For Houston, Whitney Merciless, probable. Dwayne Brown, out. Jadeveon Clowney, questionable. Nate Washington, probable. Alfred Blue, probable. I think all these guys outside of Dwayne Brown, who's out, I think all these guys are going to play. You see a guy that's saying questionable, probable. This is the playoffs. It's not a regular season game. If these guys can go out there and make some of the same moves, even if there is discomfort, they're going to play. But as I said before, I'm going to go with the Chiefs in that game. The next game, still Saturday, January 9th, 8:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Pittsburgh Steelers head to Cincinnati to play the Bengals. Now, the one big thing you can say about the Bengals, no Andy Dalton. They played the last 2 games without him. One of those games with the Steelers, he actually got hurt in the Steelers game. I think it was a broken thumb, I believe, on his throwing hand. Pretty much put him out for the rest of the season, including playoffs. And up to that point, the Bengals were looking really good. And you losing Andy Dalton, I know a lot of people, just coming into the playoffs, didn't have a lot of trust in Andy Dalton. Bengals have been to the playoffs. They've had good regular seasons, and they went to the playoffs, and they've lost in like the first game. But his replacement is A.J. McCarron. Ask yourself, okay, you don't trust either guy. Who do you trust more? I'm going to trust the guy who was a projected starter coming into the season, a guy who was playing well throughout most of the season up until that injury. So really even less trust in A.J. McCarron. I thought this year the defense improved. Those weapons, Mohamed Sanu, A.J. Green, Tyler Eifert, the running game, the offensive line has done a good job protecting the quarterback. They've done a good job of opening holes for those running backs. The issue is the quarterback. Will the quarterback be able to make plays? And he should be able to make plays against this terrible Steelers secondary. But we saw in the Steelers game, he made some mistakes. He had a pick 6 in that game. And I don't think he just overall has enough experience. And this is a playoff environment. And this Steelers team has been in the playoffs before. Ben Roethlisberger, some of these defenders that they've been to the playoffs, so they have that experience. McCarron does not. He doesn't have that experience. So it's going to be interesting to see. He's the big question mark for that Bengals team. Looking on the Steelers side, I already mentioned the bad secondary, one of the worst in football. Pretty much everybody was able to move the ball against that Steelers defense. The running game has been okay. The pass rush, not so much. They haven't been able to get as much pressure. But the huge question mark, secondary, being able to stop the pass. Teams were like, why run the ball when you can just throw the ball and move the ball very effectively against that Steelers secondary. But the huge positive for the Steelers team, and before I talk about the receivers and Ben Roethlisberger, no D'Angelo Williams. He got hurt in that last game. It is unfortunate because up until this point, he had 11 touchdowns. And this was a guy, for me watching my Carolina Panthers, he was playing really good football. He was showing that burst that he had in Carolina. The quick cuts. The guy looked like he was 5 or 6 years younger than he actually was. And a lot of people thought he was done. He was playing amazing football up until that injury. It's unfortunate that he's injured. That's a huge blow to the offense. But I think the biggest strength for that Steelers offense, the receivers, man. Namely, the best receiver in football, that is Antonio Brown. He is at, I believe, 14 touchdowns. Let me make sure exactly of his numbers. That guy's been playing amazing football. I'm sorry if I get a little quiet. Antonio Brown, he has 136 receptions for 1,834 yards and 10 touchdowns. The guy's been a beast. He would have had, honestly, his numbers would have been a lot better if Ben Roethlisberger would have stayed healthy throughout the season. His numbers would have been a lot better. And that's crazy just looking at 1,800 yards receiving and 10 touchdowns. You also have to throw in Martavis Bryant, a guy who got he was suspended the first 4 games, but this is another guy On other teams, he could possibly be a number one. He's a number two on this team. You got Marcus Wheaton, 3 speed guys. These guys are fast. And because of that, you really can't, the main focus is going to be on Antonio Brown. He's their best receiver. But Martavis Bryant, Marcus Wheaton, these guys could have big games against teams, especially when all the focus is on Antonio Brown. And, then you lead up with Heath Miller at tight end, who's always reliable. Good blocker, good receiver, catches a lot of those short, intermediate routes. That is the strength of that Steelers team, is that passing game, those receivers, and them being able to put up a bunch of points. I have a feeling that's what they're gonna have to do going into the playoffs, especially with these teams. Some of these teams. You got the Patriots, you still got the Broncos there. Could be possibly Cincinnati, seeing as if like I said, it's all about how McCarron plays. Looking at the injury report, some of these are injury reserve, like Le'Veon Bell, Bruce Gradkowski, Clifton Gathers. These are injury reserves. Out. D'Angelo Williams. I mentioned that he was going to be out. It's a huge blow, especially how good he was playing. And Martavis Bryant's probably going to play. He's going to play. And for Cincinnati, the only major injury is one I mentioned. That is Andy Dalton, who of course out. I have the Steelers winning this game, and I just think like I said, I don't trust McCarron offensively. You expect anyone to be able to move the ball against the Steelers offense, but I don't think he will, and I think the Steelers will be able to put up points. I expect Antonio Brown to have a big day. Next game, these are the moving on to Sunday, January 10th at 1:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The Seattle Seahawks head to Minnesota to play the Vikings. Now, I'm gonna start with the away team, of course. The Vikings, I will say overachievers. A lot of people call them overrated because they haven't beaten really any good teams, and probably one of the better teams they did beat was struggling Green Bay team. But at 11-5, you still got to give them credit. A lot of people did not see this. A lot of people did not see them, week 17 playing for that division, and definitely not winning that division. But they ended up winning the division. Adrian Peterson, let me get his numbers exactly. He's been playing really good football. He's his normal issue with fumbling the ball. But I made a tweet earlier this year, and I said I thought Peterson, can't remember exactly how many yards, but I think it was over 1,300 yards I said he would get. He's at 1,485. I think that leads the league. 11 touchdowns. The guy's been playing good, coming back off the whole debacle that I won't get into, but coming off that, had a really good year. Issue I don't have is with Peterson. I think the Vikings do a decent job of opening up holes, but he's a guy who he's gonna break tackles. He's gonna go out there and break tackles. My issue with the Vikings offensively, the lack of weapons, for Teddy Bridgewater to throw to, and the offensive line. Now, against the Seattle defense, Bruce Irvin, Michael Bennett, Cliff Averill, it's going to be tough, man. It's going to be tough for them, especially with that secondary and, your lack of talent at receiver. You're going to have issues with moving the ball against this Seattle offense. If Bridgewater has to hold the ball, the guy's taking some big hits this year. If he has to hold the ball against that pass rush and his poor offensive line's pass protection, it's gonna be very difficult for Minnesota to do anything offensively. Defensively, I thought the Vikings played really good. Let me check. I want to check something right quick. Everson Griffin has definitely been a guy who has played well. They've done a decent job against the run. The pass rush has been good. Secondary, despite them having some older guys, Captain Munnerlyn, 50-year-old Terrence Newman, they've been able to make some plays. But I don't think the defense is going to be an issue now with the way the Seattle offense is played. That could be an issue because Seattle's been red hot. They've one of the hotter teams coming into the playoffs, along with like the Chiefs. Like I said, the main issue I have with Minnesota, difficult, the inability to effectively protect the passer, on a consistent basis. Looking over at Seattle, like I said, red hot. Russell Wilson's been really good. Really good. You saw what they did to the Cardinals. Yeah, they lost to the Rams, but it just seems like the Rams always play them well. So you can't even look at that game as a barometer of how they've been playing. They've been putting up points. Doug Baldwin has been, let me see, his touchdowns this year. Sorry. Doug Baldwin's at 14 touchdowns. He's been one of the key cogs in terms of this explosion offensively. He's been really good. They've lost. There's not going to be no Marshawn Lynch this game. Thomas Rawls earlier this year got injured, so it's going to be I believe his name Christine Michaels. He's going to be the guy, but he actually played really good against Arizona. So we'll have to see. Guys they've been putting in there have been playing good. I wonder what that says about Marshawn Lynch's future. But Marshawn Lynch is not going to be there, so it's going to be Christine Michael, and I don't think the run game is necessarily going to be a problem. I will say the biggest improvement for this Seattle team during this, in the way that offense has been playing red hot is the pass protection from the offensive line. It definitely improved. Looking at earlier this year, they were terrible. Russell Wilson was back there running for his life, but now they've done a better job. They've been able to open up holes for whatever running back they've had in there. They've done a better job protecting the quarterback. And these receivers have stepped up. Their offense is clicking, and they got hot at the right times. They bring this into the playoffs, and if we know, based on past experience, those teams are dangerous. Teams that come into the playoffs, they could have been struggling earlier that year, but they get into the playoffs red hot. Defensively, they've stepped up there. They had some struggles early on this year in that secondary, but that has stepped up. It's going to be tough for Minnesota. I'm going to have to go with the Seahawks. Now, there's one thing that I guess it's more of like a weather thing that goes in Minnesota's favor. It's going to be cold as hell. It's going to be cold, I believe about 6 degrees with a 14-mile-per-hour wind chill. It's going to be cold. And how Seattle handles that, I don't know. But their team, they played in Green Bay. They played in Chicago, Detroit. They played in other places that get really cold. So I don't think that's going to affect them as much. I got the Seahawks winning. I just don't trust that offensive line for the Vikings, nor do I trust Bridgewater, to be honest. I just don't trust them to be able to move the ball through the air. And then they're going to stack 8 in the box to stop Peterson. So I just don't see the Vikings moving the ball very well. The next game, Sunday, January 10th at 4:40 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the Green Bay Packers head to the Washington Redskins to play. Head to Washington to play Redskins. I'm sorry. Redskins, another team playing in the bad division, who they get into the playoffs. They got things done. Pretty much if they like the last 2-3 games, they'd have won out those games. They automatically they win those divisions. I think it was up to week 16. I think it was like week 14, 15, and 16. They won those games. They played, I believe, 2 division games. They won those games, made the playoffs. You got to give them credit for getting the job done and pretty much controlling your own destiny. Kirk Cousins, later on in the season, he started to play better. The defense started to make some plays, but I don't know. This is interesting because the Packers have not played well at all. Aaron Rodgers has struggled, and it's it's one of the times where you don't want to come into the playoffs slumping, and they haven't looked well. They have not played well. You watched the game against Minnesota. He just the pass rush, teams pass rushes have been able to get to him. He's had to hold the ball a little bit longer. It's gonna be interesting to see how what you see from Green Bay offensively, and I would say defensively as well. It's been up and down with them defensively. One game you'll see that they're out there making a bunch of plays. Then the next game, teams are able to move the ball against them. So just as much as the issues with Aaron Rodgers and that offense, it's just we'll have to see how that defense is played. They've been up and down, but I have Green Bay winning this game. Washington. Let me see. Let me check the injury reports. And I'm sorry, just to go back a little bit, wanted to give the injury reports for the Seahawks and Vikings, just the main ones. Tyler Lockett probable, Luke Wilson out, Cam Chancellor probable, Marshawn Lynch is out. Vikings, Ellison tight end, of course he's on injury reserve. Adrian Peterson probable, Laval Joseph probable, and Everson Griffin probable. All those guys I think are going to play. On to the Green Bay Washington injury report. Let's see. Eddie Lacy is probable. Sam Shields is doubtful. Washington, Deshaun Golson is questionable. Perry Riley Jr. is questionable, and Matt Jones is also questionable. I'm still going to go with the Packers, but to me, out of all the teams that are in the NFC, honestly, in the NFC playoffs, maybe the Vikings, but I think the Redskins have a chance. Just looking at the way the Packers have played, definitely to end the season. Just look at the way they play. They've struggled offensively. Now that is probably the biggest. That's the biggest issue. You got Aaron Rodgers. You expect, even with the receivers he does have, you still got Randall Cobb, James Jones, who's been a guy who couldn't even make the Giants roster, but he knows that system. Even with these guys, Devontae Adams, who was a guy they had a lot of hope for, he still struggled. And you can see the void of losing Jordy Nelson. You can see that void is really starting to affect the offense. That pretty much does it for the wild card round. We'll have to see who wins, and then that of course determines who will play in the divisional round. But can't wait. Some question marks with some of these teams, but all will be shown come wild card weekend. If you like this video, of course, give me your picks down below. But if you like this video, hit that thumbs up button and subscribe. Thanks for watching.